You won't believe what just happened to me. Imagine this. I'm enjoying a quiet Saturday morning, shooting hoops in my driveway, when suddenly, Karen from the HOA storms over like she's on a mission from the universe itself. She's waving a stack of papers, her face red, eyes wide, and she drops the bombshell. Your basketball hoop has to go. It's banned. I blinked. Banned. My hoop. The same hoop where my kids, my neighbors, and even I got our weekend exercise and fun? Apparently, it violated some obscure HOA rule about visual aesthetics or neighborhood uniformity. I skimmed the HOA handbook later, and you know what? There's a clause somewhere buried under 72 pages of legalese that says the HOA can declare any recreational item unsightly. Unsightly. A basketball hoop. Karen, of course, was smug. She smiled this self-righteous smile, like she had just single-handedly saved the neighborhood from chaos. And as she lectured me about community standards, I realized something. This wasn't just about a basketball hoop. This was about control. She thrived on making people follow her rules, even the ridiculous ones. And her rule enforcement wasn't gentle, it was aggressive. Emails, threats, complaints to the board, she had a full arsenal. But here's the thing. I'm not the type to quietly pack up my hoop and cry into a carton of ice cream. No, this called for a little creativity, a little cleverness. Because if Karen thinks she can tell me what I can or can't have in my own driveway, she clearly hasn't met me yet, so I started brainstorming. At first, it was just about replacing the hoop somewhere else, but then a wild idea hit me. Why move the hoop? Why not put it somewhere she would notice? Somewhere unavoidable. Somewhere that would remind her that her obsession with rules didn't have to ruin everyone else's fun. My grin spread across my face as I sketched out the plan in my notebook. I could practically hear her reaction already, her jaw dropping, her perfect HOA posture faltering. And the best part? This wasn't just about revenge. It was about making a statement. A fun, harmless, absolutely unforgettable statement. But before I jump into the setup, you need to understand just how ridiculous Karen's enforcement really was. And that's where Chapter 2 begins. Are you ready to continue to the next chapter? After Karen left, I sat down with a cup of coffee and my notebook, replaying every word she had said. It's unsightly, she had repeated like a mantra. I couldn't stop thinking. Unsightly? Really? The woman's house looks like a beige box with some sad shrubs. And yet, she had the audacity to dictate what my family could enjoy. That's when the idea hit me. If she wanted to control my space, I would control hers in the most literal way possible. I grabbed a sketch pad and started drawing. The plan wasn't just to put a basketball hoop somewhere. It had to be visible, unavoidable, and perfectly over her driveway. Every driver, delivery person, and visitor would see it. Every single time, Karen would get a reminder of her obsession with rules. It had to be safe, fun, and completely legal, because while I wanted to annoy her, I wasn't about to give her any legitimate reason to call the HOA on me again. Next, I considered logistics. How high should the hoop be? What materials would I use to ensure it was stable yet removable if needed? Could it withstand wind, rain, and her inevitable eye rolls? I researched portable hoops, adjustable poles, and reinforced bases. My neighbors started noticing my sudden obsession, and some even chuckled when I explained the project. It was a neighborhood secret. A little rebellion was brewing, and they were silently rooting for me. Then came the fun part, timing. I couldn't just set it up when she was home. Karen's schedule was as predictable as a clock. Morning walks, HOA calls at noon, late afternoon perfection inspections. I waited for the perfect window, a time when she was out grocery shopping and I had full access to the area. I double-checked everything, the pole, the hoop, the markings, even the basketball. This wasn't just setup, it was a statement. By the end of the day, my plan was fully mapped out. I even gave it a name in my notebook, Operation Hoop Over Karen. I imagined the look on her face, the disbelief, the fury, maybe even some panic. But the thought that made me laugh the hardest? She couldn't call it unsightly, because it would technically be in her own driveway. The ultimate irony. I went to bed that night grinning, knowing tomorrow was going to be epic. But before the execution could happen, I needed to make sure every detail was flawless, because this wasn't just a prank. This was going to be a legendary HOA showdown. Curious how I actually set it up without her noticing? That's where Chapter 3 comes in. Are you ready to continue to the next chapter? The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. This was the day. Operation Hoop Over Karen was officially launching, and I wasn't about to let anything ruin it, not even my alarm clock, which I smacked twice before rolling out of bed. I stepped outside into the cool morning air, the neighborhood still asleep except for a couple of birds chirping like they knew something legendary was about to happen. First, I checked Karen's driveway. Empty. Perfect. Her car was gone, which meant she had either gone to her yoga class or driven off for another one of her neighborhood improvement meetings. Either way, time was on my side. I quickly wheeled the disassembled hoop equipment from my garage and laid it out neatly along the curb. I wasn't taking chances. Every part had been pre-measured, pre-tested, and pre-marked. I had even rehearsed the assembly the night before in my backyard until I could practically do it with my eyes closed. The trick was speed. If Karen returned halfway through, it would be game over. But I wasn't worried. I had a plan, and today, I had motivation. Piece by piece, I began assembling the hoop. The base first, then the pole, tightening the bolts just enough to keep it steady but not enough to leave any permanent mark on her driveway. This was important. It had to be removable. My goal wasn't to vandalize, it was to make a point. A colorful, towering, impossible to ignore point. A couple of neighbors walked by during their early strolls. One gave me a thumbs up. Another whispered, "You're brave." I just GR. Karen pulled into the neighborhood like a storm cloud on wheels. Her car rolled slowly around the corner, and the second she saw the basketball hoop towering proudly over her driveway, her mouth dropped open so wide you could have fit the whole HOA rulebook inside it. She slammed on the brakes, nearly launching her sunglasses off her head, and jumped out of the car like she had just spotted a crime scene. "What is this?" she shrieked, pointing dramatically at the hoop as if it were a wild animal that had wandered into her yard. I stepped outside right on cue, sipping my iced tea like I had been waiting for this performance all morning. "Oh, that," I said casually. "Looks like a basketball hoop." Her jaw clenched. "You can't put that there. It's blocking MY property." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny. You said mine was unsightly. I figured you'd want to experience the joy of uniformity." Her face turned a shade of red I didn't know humans could reach. "This is harassment. I'm calling the HOA president right now." And she did, right there, in her driveway, pacing in circles with her phone pressed to her ear. I could hear every word. She complained, exaggerated, dramatized, and even threw in a few tears for effect. It was Oscar-worthy, but here's the twist she didn't expect. The HOA president showed up. And guess what? He didn't side with her. He looked at the hoop, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Karen, technically, this is on your property. And since you approved the guidelines last year about temporary recreational structures," he paused. Karen froze. "There's nothing we can do about it." Karen sputtered, but, it's UGLY. He sighed. "That's a matter of opinion, and not a violation." If silence could scream, hers did. She stood there shaking with rage, her fists clenching like she was trying to squeeze the entire universe into submission. Meanwhile, the neighbors had gathered, quietly but obviously entertained. A couple of them even started clapping. Karen spun toward me. "Take. IT. Down." I smiled. "As soon as you'll let me put mine back up in my driveway." There it was. Checkmate. She knew she was boxed in. The rule she used against me had officially backfired, spectacularly. She didn't answer. She just stormed inside and slammed the door so hard a bird flew out of her tree. And just like that, Operation Hoop Over Karen had achieved legendary status in the neighborhood. By now, word about the hoop over Karen's driveway had spread like wildfire. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, dogs barked in excitement, and a few kids even rolled by on scooters to witness the spectacle firsthand. Karen, meanwhile, remained barricaded inside her house, pacing back and forth, muttering every HOA complaint she had ever filed under her breath. I could hear snippets: unfair, ridiculous, totally unacceptable, classic Karen meltdown. I sat on my porch with a basketball in hand, pretending to casually dribble while keeping an eye on her reactions through the corner of my vision. Every bounce seemed to echo with sweet, sweet victory. The hoop wasn't just a structure, it was a symbol. A symbol that sometimes you have to get creative to make your point. And let's be honest, Karen had handed me the perfect opportunity. Later that afternoon, a neighbor came over with lemonade and whispered, "You're a legend. She's still yelling inside." I nodded, taking a sip and grinning. There was something magical about the way her fury filled the air while I just enjoyed the chaos. And chaos, in this case, was the ultimate scoreboard. Karen eventually emerged, hair slightly frazzled, face flushed, and arms crossed so tightly I feared she might snap in half. She glared at me, and for a moment, I thought she might try to storm the hoop down herself. But then, she realized something. The hoop was perfectly balanced, anchored safely, and completely legal. Every rule she had tried to use against me had crumbled in her own driveway. She huffed, spun around, and stomped back into her house, muttering threats about petitions, letters, and HOA meetings that may or may not have ever happened. Meanwhile, I took a shot, swished it clean through the hoop, and smiled. The perfect arc, the perfect moment, and the perfect revenge. By sunset, the neighborhood had calmed, but the story had taken on a life of its own. Text messages, whispers, and a few cheeky social media posts ensured that Operation Hoop Over Karen would not be forgotten anytime soon. Even the HOA couldn't stop it. Because sometimes, a little ingenuity and a playful sense of justice outweigh bureaucracy. That night, I sat on my porch again, watching the sunset reflect off the rainbow-colored basketball hoop like a trophy. Karen might have tried to ban fun, but in the end, creativity, patience, and a little bit of mischief won the day. And that's how a banned hoop turned into a legendary neighborhood story that will be told for years. And as I drained one last three-pointer into my victorious hoop, I thought, sometimes, the best way to handle a Karen isn't with anger, it's with a little imagination. Enjoying this backyard showdown with Karen? Hit that subscribe button to catch more hilarious and clever HOA stories. Also, give this a like if you laughed along, and drop a comment below. What would you do if a neighbor tried to control your fun?